I want you to imagine something for a second. What if the moment that humans finally merge with machines the moment we become fundamentally intertwined with our technology, is not some distant sci-fi fantasy centuries away?
Right, not like flying cars in the year 3000.
Exactly. What
Yeah.
if it's just, a few decades down the line? Think about that. You are sitting there right now listening to this, and within your lifetime, everything you know about intelligence, about life, and about reality itself is going to change completely. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our source material is a fascinating stack of notes and insights summarizing Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity Is Nearer.
It really is a staggering premise, and that sets up our mission for this deep dive perfectly. We are going to explore the 5 most powerful insights drawn from these notes to understand exactly how exponential technology is quietly reshaping your reality right at this very moment.
Yeah, we aren't just looking at what is coming. We're breaking down the mechanisms of how it's happening right under our noses.
Exactly, we're looking at the how and the why.
Okay, let's unpack this because the very first insight from these notes deals with a concept that fundamentally breaks our brains, which is the illusion of speed. The core idea is that technological progress is exponential, not linear.
Right.
Most people, we think change happens step by step. We wake up, we expect tomorrow to look pretty much like today, maybe just a tiny bit more advanced. But technology doesn't walk. It multiplies, it doubles, and then doubles again.
And the underlying friction here is biological. The human brain evolved in a strictly linear environment. If you were a hunter-gatherer chasing prey, it moved at a linear speed.
Sure.
You tracked seasons in a predictable linear pattern. So we are biologically hardwired to project the future in a straight line. But technology, specifically computing power and information systems, operates on an exponential curve.
Which is incredibly hard for us to intuitively grasp.
It is. Kurzweil calls this the law of accelerating returns. Once a technology becomes an information technology, its price performance doubles at a completely predictable rate.
To give you a sense of how wildly different that is, let's use an analogy. Imagine you are standing at your front door, and you take 30 linear steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. You probably make it across your living room, maybe out to the driveway.
Right. 30 steps equal 30 paces.
But what if you took 30 exponential steps? Meaning your first step is 1 pace, your second is 2 paces, your third is 4 paces, then 8, 16, 32.
It is the ultimate blind spot for human intuition. By the time you reach step 30, you aren't just down the street.
No. If you take 30 exponential steps, you travel 1 billion meters. You would walk all the way around planet Earth 26 times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that is the massive, undeniable difference between linear and exponential growth. And the notes point out how this creates a massive illusion for us. When you are on those early steps, 1, 2, 4, 8, it feels incredibly slow. You are just shuffling around your front yard. It feels like nothing is happening.
But then suddenly the curve shoots upward and it becomes overwhelming. What's fascinating here is the mechanics of that sudden shock. Because of this exponential curve, what looks totally impossible today, something that feels like pure magic, becomes the new normal almost overnight.
Yeah, people totally get caught off guard.
Exactly. We spend decades in the flat part of the curve. People get complacent. They look at a technology and scoff. They say, oh, it's clunky, it hallucinates, it's just a parlor trick. But they are looking at step 4 or step 8. They don't realize that step 20 is right around the corner, and step 30 reshapes global economics.
When you realize this, it completely changes how you look at your own future. The takeaway here, this mini shift for you listening, is that the future doesn't arrive gradually. It hits all at once.
All at once.
If you are charting out your career, your business, or your education based on the linear progression of industries today, you are walking into a trap. The systems and skills required for tomorrow are transforming far faster than our biology wants to admit.
And that exponential growth doesn't just mean we get faster versions of the same tools. The sheer volume of computational power physically changes the nature of what we are building. We aren't just making better filing cabinets or faster calculators anymore.
Right.
We have crossed a threshold where we are creating non-biological intelligence.
Which brings us to insight number 2. Human intelligence is no longer limited to the wet, biological brains inside our skulls. AI systems are rapidly reaching a point where they aren't just processing data, They are synthesizing, learning, and solving incredibly complex problems.
We have to look at the physical bottlenecks of biology to understand why this shift is happening. Biological brains are incredible, but they are severely constrained.
I mean, there's only so much room in there, right?
Exactly. First, by the literal size of the human skull, you can only fit so many neurons in there before it just gets too big. Second, biological neurons communicate via chemical signals, and those signals travel at about 100 meters per second.
Which sounds fast until you compare it to a machine.
Exactly. Non-biological intelligence doesn't have those physical constraints. It transmits information at the speed of light through optical fibers, which is roughly 300 million meters per second.
That is just an absurd difference.
It really is. It can scale infinitely by adding more server clusters. It can share a newly learned skill across billions of nodes instantly without the biological degradation or the, years of practice it takes a human to master subject.
Okay, I hear you, but I have to push back here a little bit. Isn't there a hard limit to this? Sure, a computer can crunch numbers faster than I can, and maybe can process variables far beyond human working memory. But won't human creativity always have the upper hand?
That's a common assumption, yeah.
Right, like won't that intuitive spark, that ability to connect seemingly unrelated dots to make art or invent a completely novel concept, will that always belong to biology?
It is a totally natural defense mechanism to think that way. We desperately want to protect what makes us feel unique, but the source text directly dismantles this idea.
Wait, really? How?
Well, the text suggests that creativity itself is ultimately a highly complex form of pattern recognition and synthesis. When a human paints a masterpiece or writes a symphony, they are drawing on a lifetime of subconscious inputs, recognizing emotional patterns and recombining them.
So it's basically biological algorithms.
Essentially, yes. An advanced non-biological intelligence can analyze every painting ever created, every piece of music ever recorded, understand the underlying mathematical structures of human emotion, and synthesize novel creations at a scale we simply cannot match.
I mean, I understand the logic, but that is a really tough pill to swallow. It means redefining creativity from this magical human spark to high-speed pattern recognition. If art is fundamentally just math, that changes our entire relationship with culture.
It does.
It makes you question what human value even is in that landscape.
That friction you are feeling is the exact paradigm shift the book is pointing toward. Once non-biological intelligence surpasses human capabilities in pattern recognition, it will drive innovation and creativity relentlessly.
So what does this all mean? If non-biological intelligence is going to outpace us so dramatically across the board, how do we even navigate daily life?
That is the big question.
The realization here is that your competitive edge is absolutely not going to be what you inherently know. Rote memorization or mastering a single, static workflow is a losing game. Your edge will be how effectively you work with intelligent tools.
It is an era of cognitive collaboration. The people who thrive won't be the ones testing their biological intellect against a machine. They will be the ones who use AI to amplify their capabilities. They will learn to ask better questions, direct the machine's focus, and use it as a lever.
But there is a massive physical problem with that, isn't there?
Which is?
If AI is processing millions of data points a second and thinking at the speed of light, our biological bodies physically cannot keep up. I mean, my thumbs typing a prompt on a glass screen is an absurd bottleneck.
Oh, absolutely. The input-output rate is terrible.
Right. So the only physical way to keep up is to close the physical gap between us and the machine.
Which is insight number 3 from Kurzweil's notes, the convergence, the inevitable merging of humans and machines.
Now, I know when you hear merging with machines, the immediate mental image is pure sci-fi. It sounds like we're all going to become cyborgs from a movie with metal arms. But the sources point out we need to look at this on a continuum.
Yeah, it's not going to happen all at once.
We all know we already outsource a massive amount of our memory to our phones. Nobody remembers phone numbers anymore. Your calendar, your navigation, it is all offloaded.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have already accepted cognitive offloading. But the current setup, staring at a rectangle in your hand, is a low bandwidth connection. The typing, the reading, the screen time, it is just too slow.
It's archaic when you really think about it.
It is. The convergence Kurzweil details is about removing that biological bottleneck entirely. It moves from a device in your pocket to a wearable to ultimately a direct brain-computer interface. We are talking about technologies like neural lace or nanobots in the capillaries of our brain, wirelessly connecting our neocortex directly to the cloud.
That is wild.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, it makes total sense. If I have a question right now, My instinct isn't even to think about the answer. My instinct is to think about the fastest way to type the query.
Yes, your workflow is already adapted to it.
Exactly. The phone is already a secondary lobe of my brain.
Yeah.
So the shift from typing on a device to my neurons directly pinging the cloud for the answer is just an interface upgrade. It is not a change in our fundamental behavior.
And that fundamentally redefines what it means to be human. Historically, we define ourselves by the hard biological boundaries of our skin and our skull. But if your cognition is distributed seamlessly across biological neurons and silicon processors, if you can think of a complex physics problem and your cloud-connected neocortex solves it instantly, that boundary completely dissolves.
Which frames a really empowering realization for you listening to this. You are not separate from technology. You are already on the path to merging with it. Once you stop viewing tech as an other that is happening to you and start viewing it as a physical and cognitive extension of you, the future becomes a lot less terrifying.
But if we are continually upgrading the human mind and seamlessly integrating the human body with technology, we inevitably slam into our absolute greatest biological limitation, the one thing our biology constantly works against.
The ticking clock.
Yes.
Our lifespan.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Insight number 4 focuses on radical life extension. The text explains that advances in biotechnology driven by the AI we just talked about could significantly extend the human lifespan.
And we are not just talking about managing the symptoms of getting older or making an 80-year-old feel slightly less achy.
No, we're talking about treating aging itself as a reversible cellular condition.
The mechanism here is crucial. Biological aging is essentially the accumulation of errors at the cellular level. DNA damage, cellular senescence, the shortening of telomeres. Historically, medicine has just treated the diseases that result from this damage like heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's.
Treating the symptoms, basically. Exactly. But with non-biological intelligence designing advanced biotech, the text points to interventions like programmed nanobots that travel through the bloodstream, repairing DNA errors and clearing out senescent cells. It is engineering our biology at the molecular level to turn back the biological clock.
Which introduces this wild concept of longevity escape velocity. It is like repairing an airplane while it is in mid-flight. You don't need a magical cure for immortality today. You just need your current biology to hold up long enough for the next generation of biotech tools to come online.
Right, buying time for the next breakthrough.
Exactly. Which then fixes enough damage to keep you flying until the next generation of tools arrives.
Yeah.
For every year you live, science adds more than a year to your life expectancy.
And we have to really pause and consider the sociological implications here, because radical life extension completely upends human civilization. Every societal structure we have is built around a roughly 80-year lifespan. You spend the first 20 years learning, the next 40 years working, and the last 20 years resting. That is the standard biological script.
But what if you have 150 years? Or 300 years?
The pressure to figure out your one true identity by age 22 completely evaporates. You could have a 40-year career in structural engineering, take a decade off to study philosophy in Kyoto, and then start a second 50-year career in synthetic biology.
Marriages, economic models, compound interest, the entire concept of retirement, everything has to be fundamentally redesigned.
Everything changes.
It makes you look at time totally differently. The realization here is that time is about to become your greatest asset, but only if you are prepared for it. The actionable advice drawn from these sources is to heavily invest in your long-term health and your cognitive performance today.
Yeah, don't ignore your health just because nanobots are coming.
Right. You want to make sure your biological airplane doesn't crash before the mid-flight repair technologies become widely available.
You have to maintain physical and cognitive flexibility. If you are going to live for 2 centuries, you cannot be rigid in your thinking. The global economy, culture, and technology will reshape themselves dozens of times over your extended lifetime.
Which leads us to the ultimate question. We have exponential growth doubling computing power. We have intelligence shifting from biology to silicon. We are physically merging with these machines to keep up, and we are using them to extend our lifespans by centuries. Where does this constant exponential acceleration actually lead?
It leads to the absolute boundary of our understanding. Insight number 5, the singularity.
The singularity is a term that gets thrown around a lot in pop culture, usually with pictures of red-eyed Terminators. But let's define it strictly using the source material.
Mm-mm.
The text defines the singularity as this specific point in time where non-biological intelligence surpasses human intelligence and begins improving itself rapidly, designing its own next-generation hardware and software.
This raises an important question about our ability to even predict the future. In astrophysics, a singularity is the center of a black hole, a point where the rules of physics as we know them break down and an event horizon forms.
Right, a point of no return.
Yes, and we literally cannot see past an event horizon because no light can escape. The technological singularity is a metaphorical event horizon. After this point, predicting what happens next becomes nearly impossible for a purely biological human.
Because intelligence is the very tool we use to predict the future.
Exactly. We use our intelligence to forecast outcomes. But if there is an intelligence on the planet that is 1 billion times more capable than ours, and it is designing a smarter version of itself every few seconds, the resulting technological leaps are fundamentally beyond our cognitive hardware.
It is like a golden retriever trying to understand the macroeconomic principles of the global supply chain. The biological equipment simply isn't there to process it.
That is the perfect analogy.
That is both terrifying and awe-inspiring, but it gives us our final critical takeaway. The most important skill in your arsenal going forward is not knowing things. Knowledge is static. The most important skill is adapting to things.
Absolutely.
In a world approaching the singularity, relying on fixed static skills, whether that is a specific coding language, a rote workflow, or a specific set of keystrokes, is a trap.
Your value will be derived entirely from your elasticity, your ability to let go of old paradigms, absorb new realities, and pivot.
Okay, let's bring this all together into the grand synthesis the source text lays out. There is a clear, unavoidable chain of causality here.
Right.
First, technology grows exponentially, doubling in power while we are blind to the speed.
Right.
Second, because of that sheer computational scale, intelligence shifts beyond biological limits. AI overtakes our chemical brains. Third, to overcome our physical bottlenecks, humans and machines converge. We directly wire ourselves to our tools. Fourth, as we gain mastery over biology at the molecular level, our lifespans extend radically through cellular repair. And finally, all of this accelerates until intelligence self-improves beyond our comprehension, leading to the singularity.
It is an incredible trajectory. The future isn't just about changing our tools, it is about changing what it means to be human.
Yeah.
For you listening, the practical steps are right in front of you. Start viewing the world exponentially, not linearly. Use AI tools today to amplify your cognition. Make them your collaborative partners. Invest heavily in your physical health to catch the longevity escape velocity. And above all, train your adaptability. The flexible will thrive.
You cannot fight an exponential curve, but you can absolutely ride it. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the insights of the Singularity Is Nearer. Stay adaptable and keep looking forward. But before you go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over on your own.
Oh, this is a good one.
We've talked extensively about how the definition of being human will evolve. So imagine a point in the future. If your intelligence is entirely non-biological, running on the cloud, and your physical body is seamlessly merged with nanobots and synthetic parts, and your lifespan has no biological end, at what point do you stop being the you and listening to this deep dive right now?